People for decades on both the left and the right in the United States have been talking about how the country is becoming a banana republic. That is, it's becoming yet another corrupt third world nation that reeks of incompetence, dysfunctionality, and is ruled by a small kleptocratic elite that loots the state and the rest of society to enrich themselves. And that's not to say that this hasn't always been the case with most societies, but one of the defining characteristics when you get into being a banana republic is people don't even really care anymore. They don't try to keep it like the corruption and the looting and stuff within reasonable measures. They don't try to hide it, use shell companies, stuff like that. They don't even really try to go through intermediaries. They just directly take the bribes. They just directly take the money. They directly just use the government to destroy their political opponents and all that sort of thing. Also, they tend to be extremely dysfunctional, and the way that they go about a lot of this stuff is very incompetently done. And as a slight side note, I find that might be the single most destructive impulse someone can have when they're in a position of power or business is greed. A lot of mafia bosses, what ultimately brings them down isn't so much their brutality. It's that them or their capos get really greedy and they start stiffing everybody else, and no one else can make a buck, so they wind up getting whacked because of that. Another interesting case of that is in China, where you have corruption as part of the system. Civil servants aren't paid particularly well in China, from my understanding, so you're allowed to accept bribes and issue permits and stuff like that. But you have to keep it to a reasonable level. You can't go overboard. You can't be so corrupt to the point where it starts making your job just completely impossible to do. So if you're taking a couple bribes to supplement your income, that's cool. But if you're literally destroying your local district because you're taking so many bribes and issuing so many fake permits, that's when they start to go after you. And that's once again when it becomes an endemic part of the system that's widely accepted, you're probably a banana republic. The only trait that is often attributed to banana republics that I don't think is accurate is the concept of electoral fraud. Because electoral fraud has not and never will take place anywhere on Earth, including in the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. So I don't understand when people talk about like Venezuela or any of these countries having electoral fraud. If there is one trait of a banana republic that the United States does not have, even though banana republics actually don't have this either, it would be electoral fraud. There is, however, a distinct lack of ethics in video game journalism that was bad to begin with, but has gotten exponentially worse as of the 2020 presidential election. And as always, ethics in video game journalism is not a euphemism for anything. I just want to put that out there. But why do I say the US is becoming a banana republic? Just looking at the Biden stuff, we've talked about corrupt politicians before. People talked about Bush, people talked about Clinton, people talked about Obama, people talked about Trump. The degree to which Biden is corrupt, that he's taken payoffs, that he's been directly involved in criminal enterprises, is kind of shocking. Just because of how blatant it is. Like, you've seen the emails, like, where it literally just says his name, and you have my personal favorite one, the big 10% for the big guy. And I think there's a clip where he's like, oh yeah, I told Ukraine to fire the prosecutor who was looking into my son, or I'd withhold aid from them. And we have all this stuff in like emails, there's video, there's like audio recordings of it. There's people testifying. Like, no one can even explain what Trump's first impeachment was over. I've asked people, and they'll say it's like Russiagate. They'll say it's abuse of power. They'll say it's Trump taking a bribe. It was some call to Ukraine, and no one's even really been able to explain to me how it's a high crime. He was impeached over that. Biden was not impeached, though, over threatening to withhold aid from Ukraine unless they gave kickbacks to his son. That is not okay. You are not allowed to do that. You are, however, you are allowed to do that. You're not, however, allowed to call the president of Ukraine. Trump can be impeached over a bunch of boomers rioting. That is his fault. Biden can't be impeached for his followers seceding and creating their own country named after a Yu-Gi-Oh! GX character. That's not the case. But just the degree, and I recommend you go look. Like, even if we pretend that everything Hunter did is fake, the fact that his lawyer called in to his hearing and pretended to be the prosecution to get evidence removed is like one of the most third world shady things I've ever heard of. Like, who the fuck does that? And the fact that that was just completely unremarkable and no one ever mentioned it again. The only post Civil War president, or post Reconstruction president I can think of who is as close to as corrupt as Biden is LBJ. And I think they're pretty close. I think Biden might be more corrupt than LBJ. It's very difficult. Clinton was corrupt, but Clinton was very smart at managing his corruption. The thing that he got impeached over was bullshit. Like, is him having an affair with Monica Lewinsky, is that bad? Yes. Is it beneath the dignity of his office? Yes. But to a large extent, it was a really embarrassing, personal thing. And presidents have done so much worse stuff, including Clinton, that I don't get why the Republicans decide to waste everyone's time with that. It's not quite to the tier that Trump phone called somebody, but it comes pretty close. The Biden stuff, though, is just insane. Like I said, just look into it. It's people. The Democrats are saying, "Oh, this is going to be the end of the Republican Party if they bring this up. This is going to be another nothing impeachment." And I hate to have any kind of hope in the American political process or American people, but I kind of feel it's so bad that the Republicans just need to do the impeachment. It's not going to pass the Senate. They aren't going to have the 50 or 60 votes to do it. But the stuff is so flagrant, and there's so much of the big guy emails and stuff like that, and Hunter just being a degenerate, that if they just send it out there, I think it's going to have a real effect on the election. Now, granted, it probably won't matter anyways because of ethics in video game journalism, but I think the more you can expose the lack of ethics in video game journalism and delegitimize the entire review system, the better at this point in time. There's all kinds of other banana republicish stuff about the United States. You have hyperinflation, money printing, industry being exported to other countries in some weird neo-mercantilist system. All kinds of just strange shit going down. The other thing, though, that I think is really banana republicish, and I never thought I'd see, at least not for another couple decades, is the whole Trump thing. Let's just think about this for a minute. The whole, attempts to arrest Trump is something you see in, Russia or Venezuela or Bolivia or... I mean, people talk about Turkey as being a authoritarian country and a corrupt country, but Turkey had a very close election. It's hard for me to even think of a country that's not just a dictatorship that does the kind of stuff that the U.S. is trying to do to Trump, where they're trying to arrest him for stuff that no one can even really explain. I remember I read the indictment. It was literally he sent emails, he posted tweets, there was some conspiracy to do some vague thing. They're bringing up charges that the statute of limitations has expired on. There's weird tax stuff. Tax evasion is always the one that you bring out when you want to get your opponent on something, because the tax system in most countries is so complicated. Everyone is in violation of it at any given time. And even if somebody is legally evading taxes, you can still just change the rules retroactively or do something else in order to get them on some sort of tax evasion. To be fair, though, a lot of it is legal. People keep complaining about Trump not paying taxes for certain years. But to my understanding, he took a legal tax deduction for losing money. And it's I had come up with the fair share pledge, wherein you donate your entire tax refund to the government. But that's apparently that's criminal for him taking legal tax deductions, stuff like that. So you have that. The latest one I've heard is they're trying to take Trump off of the ballot. They're just going to say, look, he can't run, he can't be on the ballot in these states at all. This didn't even happen with Eugene Debs when he was in jail for sedition during, I believe it was World War One. It didn't happen then. There's been lots of other people who have run for office who are seditious, but they didn't have their names taken off the ballot. Maybe there was somebody. I can't really think of anybody off the top of my head who's had their name taken off the ballot, at least who's the leader of a major party or a party that gets more than 5% of the vote. Basically, they're saying what we're going to do is the former president who lost in a very close election, a completely fair election, but one that was very close, who's going to have a rematch against an extremely unpopular, incompetent incumbent president who's probably in major trouble, and who's basically guaranteed to get the Republican nomination at this point in time. And we're just gonna try to remove him from the ballot. We're gonna try to arrest him and throw him in jail. We're gonna violate what I like to call the unspoken agreement that you don't prosecute politicians for crimes. That's all gonna go out of the window. Meanwhile, you have the Biden crime family and the lowest tier, lamest, most G-slur corruption scandals I've ever seen. It's like, dude, at least if you're gonna steal money, pull a Clinton. Do it with a bit of class. Don't do this just I don't even know how to describe it, but it's... You have a country with a president who's so corrupt and incompetent, and openly so, who doesn't even really make any real attempt to hide it, and someone who just blatantly has weaponized the entire judicial system to crush his political opponents in a way that you would see, like I said, in Venezuela or Bolivia. And this is the state of affairs. This is what the U.S. has been brought to. Once again, though, at least there's no issues with elections in the U.S. When it comes to ethics in video game journalism, though, there's a lot of questions as to whether the reviews that games get are accurate or not, if there's going to be a whole bunch of bots that will come in and post enough reviews so that it goes above the threshold in certain states in terms of the Metacritic score. The fact that this is even a question that's believed by a large percentage of the population is already kind of a clusterfuck. Even if there was 100% ethics in video game journalism, the fact that a substantial proportion, maybe 30-40% or more, think that there's no ethics in video game journalism is kind of a really bad sign. So they don't, I think regardless of what happens with the 2024 video game releases, a lot of people just won't believe whatever the results are. Particularly if Trump does not succeed in outselling Biden in terms of his video game, because the journalism surrounding it is very good. I think perhaps a majority of those who support Trump will not think that it's legitimate. And given just how inept they are at covering any of this stuff up, it was pretty bad last time, but now they're not even going to go with, oh, we're going to have delayed release dates, we're going to give out copies for early review, we're going to allow unverified accounts to post reviews and give ratings. Now they're just saying we're just going to not allow the game to be sold in stores. We're going to arrest the developers of the game. We're going to just not even be released. So, like I said, the U.S. is a banana republic now. It's sad, but it's true. And as time goes on, it's going to get worse and worse. And as I said, I didn't think it would get to this point nearly as quick as it has, but here we are, I guess. So, viva corrupción, viva incompetencia, viva the United States of America.